girl had always loved the quiet corners of the house, the places where sunlight fell softly and the air seemed still. She would sit there with a notebook in her lap, doodling little patterns or tracing words with her fingers. But more than anything, she loved the sound of music. Her mother had always told her stories of how music could carry feelings, how a simple note could reach someone's heart, and she held onto those words like a secret treasure. It was a rainy afternoon when she finally decided to ask for something that had been on her mind for a long time. She wanted to play the piano at the upcoming school recital. To her, it seemed simple, natural, almost obvious. But to the people around her, it was a request that was far from ordinary. She had been watching her classmates practice for weeks, their laughter filling the hallways, their fingers moving confidently over instruments she could only dream of playing publicly. Every time she peeked into the music room, she felt a mix of longing and fear. She was not sure if she could be like them, if she could sit in front of an audience and let her music speak. Yet, there was something inside her that urged her forward, something that whispered she had the right to try. She took a deep breath and approached the teacher one afternoon, her voice soft but firm. "I would like to play in the recital," she said. "I've been practicing at home, and I think I'm ready." The teacher looked at her with a small, almost amused smile. "Are you sure? The recital is for students who have been taking lessons for years. This is a big stage." She nodded, trying to keep the nerves from showing. "I just want to try. I love playing, and I think I can do it." The teacher hesitated but eventually said, "We'll see what we can do." There was a hint of doubt in the tone, and she left the room with a mixture of hope and anxiety. As she walked down the hall, she heard whispers from other students. Some giggled, some shook their heads, and a few even called out, questioning why she thought she could perform. Their words stung more than she expected. She wanted to hide, to retreat to her safe corner at home, but she also felt a stubborn determination to prove herself. At home, she found comfort in the familiar. The piano in the living room had been silent for months, but she had practiced quietly, letting the keys tell her story. Her fingers knew the notes, the rhythm, the pauses, and the crescendos. Every sound she produced was a small victory, a testament to the time she had spent alone, perfecting her craft. She could almost hear her mother's voice encouraging her, reminding her that effort mattered more than applause. Her mother had passed away when she was younger, but the lessons, the love, and the belief in her abilities remained alive in her heart. The next day at school, the mockery continued. A group of students laughed openly when she mentioned her wish to perform. "You? At the recital? That'll be funny," one said. Another chimed in. "Maybe you should stick to practicing in your bedroom where no one can hear you." Her cheeks burned with embarrassment, but she refused to let them see her hurt. She quietly told herself that their laughter meant nothing compared to the music that lived inside her. That evening, she sat at the piano, letting her fingers dance over the keys. The notes were soft at first, hesitant, but gradually they grew bolder, richer, stronger. She lost herself in the melodies, feeling a warmth spread through her chest that no words could describe. The music became a refuge, a world where doubt could not reach her. As the days passed, she practiced with more focus. Every note mattered. Every passage she struggled with became a challenge she was determined to overcome. She imagined the recital, the stage, the audience, and the thrill of playing her heart out. She pictured her mother sitting in the front row, smiling proudly, and that image pushed her forward when the world outside seemed doubtful or cruel. Her teacher noticed the change too. When she finally tried playing in front of the class, there was a quiet moment of surprise. The girl's hands moved over the keys with grace and precision, producing a sound that was pure and heartfelt. Even some of the students who had mocked her before were caught off guard, their laughter fading into silence. They had underestimated her, and for the first time, they realized there was more to her than they had imagined. Despite this small victory, she knew the real challenge was still ahead. The recital would be a true test, and fear still lingered in the back of her mind. She thought about the moments when she felt small, unworthy, or uncertain, and she realized that overcoming them was part of the journey. Music was not just about notes and rhythm. It was about courage, about showing the world who she was even when others doubted her. At home, she created a small ritual. Every afternoon, she would sit at the piano, close her eyes, and imagine the recital hall. She would feel the spotlight, hear the quiet murmur of the audience, and then let the music flow through her as if nothing else existed. She learned to breathe with the music, to let it carry her fears away, and to focus on the joy it gave her rather than the judgment of others. Her friends at school began to notice the change too. Some were curious, asking her questions about her practice and her favorite pieces. A few even admitted they had been wrong to doubt her. While their approval was not what drove her, it was a reminder that persistence and passion could change perceptions. She was not performing for them, but the acknowledgement felt like a small, encouraging sign along the way. There were still moments of insecurity. Sometimes, late at night, she would wonder if she was truly ready, if the notes would sound right, or if her fingers would falter under pressure. But then she would think of her mother, of the words of encouragement that echoed in her memory, and she would pick herself up and try again. Each practice session became a step forward, a small triumph over fear, and a preparation for the moment when she could share her music with the world. One afternoon, as she practiced a particularly difficult piece, her younger sibling came in and listened quietly. When she finished, they clapped softly and said, "That was beautiful. You really should play for everyone." The words, simple and innocent, touched her deeply. She realized that the joy of music was not only in performing for others but also in the way it could connect hearts, even in the smallest moments. The weeks leading up to the recital were filled with anticipation and quiet determination. She continued to face mockery and doubt, but each note she played was a step toward proving to herself, first and foremost, that she was capable. She began to understand that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to move forward despite it. Her mother's pride, though unseen, became a guiding light, a source of strength that gave her the confidence to keep practicing, keep believing, and keep dreaming. By the time the day of the recital approached, she was nervous but ready. She had transformed her fear into focus, her doubt into determination, and her quiet passion into music that resonated deeply within her. She knew the journey was just beginning, but she also knew that this first step, this simple request that had been met with mockery, was the start of something meaningful. It was more than a performance. It was a declaration of her courage, her love for music, and the enduring influence of her mother's guidance. The girl was ready to face the world, one note at a time, carrying her mother's pride in her heart and her music as her voice. The days after she asked to perform at the recital were not easy. At school, the whispers grew louder, and sometimes she could hear the mocking laughter follow her down the hall. It was hard not to notice, and each laugh or sideways glance felt like a small weight on her shoulders. She wondered if she had been foolish to ask, if maybe her dreams were too big, or if the music inside her was not enough. Yet, every time she sat at the piano at home, those doubts began to fade, replaced by a quiet determination that grew stronger with each note. Her teacher had given her a chance to play, but the rehearsals were more challenging than she had imagined. The other students were skilled, their fingers moving with confidence over the keys, producing notes that seemed effortless. When she practiced in the music room, she sometimes struggled to keep up, missing a note here, hesitating there. At first, it frustrated her, and she wanted to give up, but she remembered her mother's words about persistence and focus. She began to approach each practice with patience, telling herself that improvement was more important than perfection. Every afternoon, she would sit at the piano, her fingers hovering over the keys, thinking about the music she wanted to create. She tried to imagine herself on stage, her hands moving as if they had a life of their own, each note carrying the emotion she felt. Some days were easier than others. There were moments when the melody flowed naturally, and her heart soared with pride. Other days, the notes seemed foreign, her fingers awkward and uncertain. But even on those hard days, she would not stop. She learned that progress often came slowly, in small steps, and that each struggle was part of the journey. Outside the music room, her classmates continued to doubt her. When she spoke about her plans for the recital, some laughed openly, while others shook their heads as if to say she didn't belong. The comments hurt, but she tried to ignore them. Instead, she focused on the people who mattered: her mother, whose memory gave her strength, and the few friends who quietly supported her without fanfare. They reminded her that what mattered most was her love for music and the courage to follow her dreams. At home, she found ways to make her practice more meaningful. She would set small goals each day, mastering a difficult passage, improving her timing, or expressing more feeling through each note. Sometimes she recorded herself and listened carefully, noting where she could improve. Other times, she simply let the music flow, allowing it to express the emotions she could not put into words. In those moments, she felt connected to something greater than herself, a sense of purpose and a quiet joy that carried her through the challenges. One afternoon, while practicing, she found herself struggling with a particularly tricky section. Her fingers stumbled repeatedly, and frustration welled up inside her. She wanted to stop, to give up and hide away, but she closed her eyes and remembered her mother's gentle voice. She imagined her mother smiling, encouraging her to try again, to keep going even when it was hard. Taking a deep breath, she began again, slowly at first, then with more confidence. Each repetition brought improvement, and by the end of the session, the notes flowed more smoothly. She felt a small triumph, a reminder that perseverance was more powerful than fear. The mockery at school did not stop, but over time, it began to lose its power over her. She realized that people often laughed at what they did not understand, at what they were too afraid to try themselves. Their opinions no longer defined her. She began to focus on her own progress, celebrating even the smallest achievements. When she hit a difficult note perfectly, when her hands moved in harmony with the music, she felt pride and satisfaction that no one could take away. Her friends at home and in the neighborhood began to notice her dedication. Some would peek into the living room and watch her play, offering quiet encouragement or asking her to teach them a small part of what she had learned. She found joy in sharing the music she loved, seeing the way it could touch others, even in small ways. The support, though limited, reminded her that courage and persistence could inspire those around her. There were still nights when doubt crept in. She would lie in bed, thinking about the recital, imagining herself in front of an audience, and feeling a flutter of fear. What if she made a mistake? What if people laughed again? What if she wasn't as good as she hoped? In those moments, she would think back to all the hours she had spent practicing, all the small victories, and all the ways she had overcome challenges. Slowly, the fear would begin to fade, replaced by a quiet confidence that she could face the stage and play her music with honesty and feeling. Her teacher noticed the change as well. During a practice session in front of the class, she played a piece she had been struggling with, and this time the notes were confident and expressive. The classroom fell silent, and even some of the students who had mocked her before seemed surprised. She saw the respect in her teacher's eyes, a quiet acknowledgement of her hard work and determination. For the first time, she felt that her efforts were not only preparing her for the recital but also earning her recognition in the world she had once felt excluded from. At home, she began to think more deeply about the meaning of her music. It was no longer just a hobby or a challenge. It was a way to express herself, to communicate feelings she could not put into words. Each practice session became a journey into her own heart, a time to explore her emotions and find strength she had not known she possessed. She began to see that the recital was not just about performing for others but about sharing a piece of herself with the world. Her younger sibling continued to be a source of encouragement. They would sit quietly while she played, listening intently, and offer simple but heartfelt praise. "You sound amazing," they would say, or, "I didn't know the piano could sound like that." Their words reminded her that music had the power to connect people, to touch hearts, and to bring joy. She began to feel that her journey, though difficult, was worth every moment of struggle. The anticipation for the recital grew as the days passed. She practiced diligently, working to perfect each piece, but she also took time to rest and care for herself. She knew that performance was not only about skill but also about presence and emotion. She imagined herself on stage, feeling the spotlight, hearing the soft murmurs of the audience, and then letting the music flow naturally. In her mind, she played for her mother, for the friends who believed in her, and for herself. One evening, after a long practice session, she sat back and reflected on how far she had come. She remembered the early days when mockery and doubt had filled her world, when fear had seemed overwhelming. Now, she felt a sense of quiet pride, knowing that she had faced those challenges and continued forward. Her music had become a source of strength, a companion in times of uncertainty, and a way to honor her mother's memory. As the recital approached, she felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The journey had not been easy, but it had been transformative. She had learned patience, resilience, and the importance of believing in herself. The ridicule of others no longer held power over her, and the music inside her had grown stronger and more expressive. She knew that the real test would come on stage, but she also knew that the preparation, the dedication, and the love for music had already made her a winner. In the quiet moments before bed, she would sit at the piano, playing softly, imagining the audience, and letting the melodies carry her fears away. She felt ready to face the world, to step into the recital hall, and to let her music speak. The journey was far from over, but she had already proven something important. That courage, persistence, and a love for what she did could overcome doubt, mockery, and fear. She was ready for the next chapter, ready to share her music, and ready to make her mother proud. The days moved closer to the recital, and with each passing moment, she felt the mixture of nervousness and excitement grow. Her practice sessions became longer, but also more focused. She had learned to break down difficult pieces into small sections, mastering each part before moving on. It was a slow process, but it allowed her to feel confident in every note she played. She began to notice subtle improvements in her timing and expression, and each success built her confidence further. The piano had become more than an instrument. It was a friend, a teacher, and a place where she could face her fears. At school, the whispers had not completely disappeared, but she had learned to ignore them. Instead of focusing on the judgment of others, she thought about the music itself. She imagined the keys as a bridge, connecting her emotions to those who might listen one day. Even if the audience laughed or doubted her, she knew that the act of performing was meaningful in itself. She reminded herself that every great musician had once faced doubt, and that perseverance was what set them apart. Her teacher began giving her extra guidance, recognizing her dedication and potential. They worked on posture, breathing, and expression, explaining how small adjustments could make a piece more powerful. At first, it felt overwhelming, but she embraced each correction, knowing it would make her performance stronger. She began to understand that practice was not just repetition but a process of refinement, of finding the soul within the music and letting it shine. At home, she created her own little routine. Each afternoon, she would practice for a set amount of time, then take a short break to relax and clear her mind. She found that resting between sessions allowed her to focus more fully, and her fingers moved more confidently over the keys. Sometimes, she would record herself and listen carefully, analyzing where she could improve. Other times, she would simply play for the joy of it, feeling the emotion pour from her heart into the music. These moments became her sanctuary, a place where she could be entirely herself. Her younger sibling often stayed nearby, watching silently or offering quiet encouragement. Their presence reminded her that music was not only a personal journey, but also a way to connect with others. They did not fully understand every note or every technical detail, but they appreciated the feeling behind it. The small claps or whispered praises warmed her heart and strengthened her resolve. She also began imagining the recital itself more vividly. She pictured walking onto the stage, the soft light illuminating the piano, the quiet murmurs of the audience fading as she played. She imagined herself losing herself in the music, letting each note carry the emotions she felt, and feeling the satisfaction of expressing herself fully. The visualization helped calm her nerves and gave her a sense of control over something that had seemed so intimidating. Despite the progress, there were still challenging moments. Certain passages would trip her up repeatedly, or her fingers would feel stiff and uncooperative. She often found herself frustrated, wondering if she would ever master the piece. But she refused to give up. She remembered her mother's encouragement and the pride she would feel if her daughter persevered. That thought pushed her forward, reminding her that effort and dedication mattered more than immediate perfection. In school, a few classmates began to notice the change in her confidence. Some were curious, asking questions about her practice, while others began to listen quietly when she played. The mockery that had once dominated the hallways started to fade, replaced by a mixture of curiosity and respect. She did not play for their approval, but it was encouraging to see that her dedication was becoming visible to those around her. Her teacher suggested she try performing a small part of her piece in front of the class before the recital. The thought made her nervous, but she agreed. Standing in front of her classmates, she felt the familiar flutter of anxiety, but she focused on the music. As her fingers moved over the keys, the notes filled the room, carrying both her practice and her emotions. The room went quiet, and when she finished, there was a brief moment of stunned silence before the applause began. Even the students who had mocked her before looked surprised, their expressions softening. She felt a sense of pride and accomplishment, knowing that her hard work was paying off. At home, she shared the experience with her sibling, who listened intently and smiled. "You sounded amazing," they said. "I think you're ready for the recital." Those words made her heart swell with confidence and reminded her that she was not alone in her journey. The support of even one person who truly believed in her could make a world of difference. She also began to focus more on the emotional aspect of her music. It was no longer enough to play the correct notes. She wanted her performance to convey feeling, to touch the hearts of those who listened. She experimented with dynamics, tempo, and expression, learning how to let the music breathe and flow naturally. Each practice session became a blend of technical refinement and emotional exploration, a way to connect her skill with her soul. As the recital approached, she started to imagine herself not just as a performer but as a storyteller. The piano became a voice, telling the story of her dedication, her struggle, and her love for music. She practiced visualizing the audience's reactions, imagining the surprise, the appreciation, and the quiet moments when the music could speak for itself. This perspective helped her feel less like she was performing for judgment and more like she was sharing something meaningful. Her confidence grew with each day of preparation. She began to see mistakes not as failures but as opportunities to learn and improve. When a passage was difficult, she would slow down, break it into smaller parts, and work through it methodically. The process was sometimes tedious, but it taught her patience and resilience. She learned that growth often came gradually, and that the journey itself was as important as the destination. She also took time to care for herself outside of practice. Walking in the park, reading a book, or simply sitting quietly became ways to recharge her mind and body. She understood that being in the right state of mind was just as important as mastering the piano, and that balance would help her perform at her best. These small habits helped her maintain focus and prevented burnout as the recital drew nearer. One afternoon, she tried playing in front of a mirror, imagining herself on stage. Watching her own movements, she noticed the tension in her shoulders and the uncertainty in her fingers. She adjusted her posture, relaxed her hands, and played again. The difference was noticeable. The notes flowed more smoothly, and she felt a sense of control she had not experienced before. This exercise became a regular part of her preparation, helping her build both confidence and physical ease. Her teacher encouraged her to keep a journal, writing down thoughts, feelings, and progress after each practice session. She discovered that reflecting on her journey helped her recognize improvement and stay motivated. Reading back on previous entries, she saw how far she had come, from the nervous girl unsure if she belonged, to a young musician ready to face the stage. The journal became a reminder of her growth, a tangible record of persistence and dedication. Evenings were often spent playing softly, exploring melodies without concern for mistakes, letting her imagination guide her fingers. She learned that music was not just about technical skill but about expression, creativity, and connection. Each evening, she felt more ready for the recital, more in tune with her own abilities, and more confident that her performance could truly reflect who she was. As the day of the recital drew nearer, she began to picture the moment when she would step onto the stage, hear the first applause, and play for the first time in front of a larger audience. She felt a mixture of excitement and nerves, but above all, she felt prepared. She had worked hard, practiced diligently, and allowed her music to become an extension of herself. The journey had been challenging, but it had also been transformative. She knew that when the curtain rose, she would play not just for recognition but to share her heart, her effort, and her love for music. And in that knowledge, she found peace, strength, and the courage to take the next step. The day of the recital arrived with a mix of sunlight and gentle breeze, carrying a sense of excitement in the air. She woke early, feeling a strange mixture of nervousness and anticipation. Every detail seemed important: the clothes she would wear, the route to the hall, even the way she would hold her hands on the keys. Her heart raced as she imagined the audience, the stage, and the moment when she would sit at the piano, ready to play. Yet, beneath the nerves, there was a quiet determination, a sense that she was prepared and that all her effort had led to this day. On the way to the recital, she could hear the murmurs of parents, students, and teachers as they arrived at the hall. The chatter and laughter reminded her of the world outside her practice room, of the expectations, and the pressure of performing in front of others. She took a deep breath and tried to focus on the music, on the feeling she had nurtured for months. Her mother's memory felt close, like a guiding presence, offering quiet encouragement and reminding her that this moment was hers to embrace. Backstage, the other performers were warming up, some chatting nervously, others practicing final notes. She noticed the confident movements of students who had years of lessons, and for a moment, doubt crept in. Could she measure up? Did she belong here among them? She closed her eyes and visualized her own journey, the hours of practice, the small victories, the dedication she had shown. With that image in mind, she lifted her head, feeling a sense of readiness she had earned through her own persistence. When it was her turn, she walked slowly onto the stage. The spotlight fell softly on her, highlighting the piano and casting a warm glow across the room. The audience's eyes seemed to follow her every move, and she could feel the soft murmur of curiosity and expectation. Her hands trembled slightly as she approached the piano, but she took a deep breath, recalling all the evenings she had spent practicing, imagining this exact moment. The first note would be the bridge between her private world of music and the audience before her. She sat at the piano, her fingers hovering above the keys, and closed her eyes for a brief moment. She remembered her mother's words about music carrying emotion and telling a story, and she let that thought center her. Slowly, she pressed the first key, and the note resonated across the hall. It was soft at first, hesitant, but it quickly gained strength, flowing naturally from her heart to her hands. With each passing moment, she became more confident, more expressive, letting the music tell the story she had practiced so many times in private. The notes moved like a river, sometimes gentle and calm, sometimes powerful and sweeping. She felt the audience listening, but she was not afraid. She played for herself, for the joy of expression, and for the memory of her mother who had inspired her love for music. Each crescendo and pause carried emotion, and she could sense the atmosphere shifting. The mockery and doubt that had once surrounded her seemed to vanish, replaced by a quiet awe and attention. Her fingers moved with grace, translating her feelings into sound, and she felt a deep connection with the music and with those who were listening. Halfway through, she hit a challenging section, one that had troubled her in practice. Her hands moved with precision, each note landing exactly as it should. She felt a thrill of accomplishment, a surge of confidence that reminded her how far she had come. The months of practice, the determination to continue despite doubt and ridicule, all converged in this moment. She was no longer the nervous girl who had asked for a chance to perform. She was a young musician sharing her heart with an audience, expressing herself fully and fearlessly. The audience was silent, absorbed in the music. She could sense the surprise and admiration as people realized the depth of talent and emotion she carried. Even those who had laughed at her before seemed to recognize the dedication behind every note. She continued playing, letting the melodies rise and fall, each phrase filled with feeling. The music seemed to carry her beyond the stage, beyond the audience, into a place where only expression and emotion existed. As the final notes approached, she felt a sense of completion, of fulfillment. Her fingers played the last chords with certainty, and the room was filled with a lingering echo that seemed to carry the story she had told through her music. She lifted her hands and waited, breathing in the moment, feeling the weight of accomplishment and the pride in knowing she had given her best. The applause began slowly, then grew louder, filling the hall with recognition and appreciation. She looked up and saw the smiles, the claps, and the quiet nods of respect from people who had once doubted her. Backstage, her sibling rushed to hug her, eyes shining with admiration. "You were amazing," they said. "I knew you could do it." Their excitement mirrored her own feelings, and she realized how much this moment meant not just to her, but to those who had supported her quietly along the way. She felt a warm sense of connection, understanding that music had the power to touch hearts and bridge gaps between people. Her teacher approached, offering congratulations and praise. "You played beautifully," they said. "Your dedication and expression were remarkable. You should be proud of yourself." For the first time, she felt fully recognized for her efforts, and a deep sense of satisfaction settled over her. She had faced doubt, ridicule, and fear, yet she had transformed it all into something beautiful, something that could move others. As she left the stage, she felt a mixture of relief, joy, and quiet pride. She had done more than perform. She had shared herself, her journey, and her love for music with an audience that had once seemed intimidating. The experience had been transformative, showing her that courage and dedication could overcome fear and judgment. She understood that every note she played had been a step toward growth, not only as a musician but also as a person who believed in herself. In the following days, the recital became a topic of conversation at school. Students and teachers alike praised her performance, expressing surprise at the depth and emotion she had brought to the stage. Even those who had once mocked her offered words of acknowledgement, some privately admitting that they had underestimated her. She accepted the recognition graciously, not for validation, but as a reminder that perseverance and passion could inspire and change perceptions. At home, she reflected on the journey that had led to this day. From the early moments of doubt and mockery to the quiet hours of practice and growth, she realized that the process had been as important as the performance itself. She thought of her mother's encouragement, the evenings spent practicing, and the small victories along the way. All of it had culminated in a moment of true expression, a testament to resilience, courage, and the power of music. The recital also inspired her to continue pursuing her passion. She began planning for future performances, exploring new pieces, and seeking ways to improve further. The experience had shown her that fear and doubt were natural, but they could be transformed into motivation and strength. She felt more confident in her abilities and more willing to embrace challenges, knowing that dedication and belief in oneself could lead to remarkable outcomes. She also realized the importance of sharing her journey with others. She wanted to encourage those who might feel doubt or face ridicule, to show that persistence and passion could lead to moments of triumph. She understood that her story was not just about playing the piano, but about courage, growth, and the willingness to face fear with determination. Her music had become a bridge between her heart and the world, a way to express what words sometimes could not. The applause and recognition from the recital stayed with her for a long time, but it was the personal growth that mattered most. She had learned to overcome doubt, to embrace her abilities, and to share her passion with confidence. She had faced the world, not with arrogance, but with courage and sincerity, letting her music speak for her. The experience reinforced her belief in the importance of perseverance, focus, and love for what one does. As she returned to her daily routine, she carried the lessons of the recital with her. Each practice session was now infused with deeper meaning, every note played with intention and emotion. She continued to grow as a musician and as a person, understanding that the journey of self-discovery and expression was ongoing. The recital had been a milestone, but it was also the beginning of a larger path, one filled with possibilities, challenges, and moments of beauty. Looking back, she realized that the simple request she had made months ago, to perform, to share her music, had set off a journey that transformed her. What had begun as a quiet dream, met with mockery and doubt, had become a story of courage, determination, and triumph. She had faced her fears, embraced her passion, and discovered the power within herself. And in doing so, she had honored her mother, shared her heart through music, and taken a step toward a future full of promise and possibility. After the recital, life felt both different and familiar. She returned home with a mixture of relief and quiet pride, carrying the memory of every note she had played, every feeling she had poured into the music. The applause, the recognition, and the smiles from the audience lingered in her mind. But what stayed strongest was the sense of accomplishment that came from knowing she had given her best. She understood that her journey had been more than a performance. It had been a transformation, a process that showed her the depth of her own courage and determination. In the days that followed, friends, teachers, and even classmates who had once doubted her offered words of praise. Some came quietly, others openly, but all acknowledged the effort and skill she had demonstrated. While the recognition was gratifying, it was the validation of her own efforts that mattered most. She reflected on the months of practice, the evenings of struggle, the moments of doubt, and the quiet victories. Each step had been essential, and the recital had been the culmination of those countless small moments. Her younger sibling continued to offer encouragement, asking her to play small pieces at home and marveling at her growing skill. Those moments reminded her that music was not just about public performance but about connection, emotion, and joy. She began to appreciate the little things more. The way a simple melody could bring a smile, the way her music could soothe or uplift, and the way sharing her passion could strengthen bonds with others. It was a new understanding, one that went beyond applause or recognition. She also noticed changes in herself. Confidence had grown, not as arrogance, but as a quiet assurance in her abilities and her passion. She approached challenges with patience and persistence, understanding that effort and dedication could overcome obstacles. When she encountered difficulties, she no longer feared failure, but saw it as a chance to learn and grow. The recital had taught her that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to face it and continue moving forward. At school, she found that her relationships with others were slowly changing. Students who had once mocked her now treated her with respect, and some even sought her advice or asked for guidance in music. While she did not perform for recognition, she understood that her journey had inspired others, showing that persistence and passion could alter perceptions. The experience created a quiet ripple of admiration, not loud or boastful, but meaningful and genuine. She continued practicing diligently, exploring new pieces and challenging herself with more difficult music. Each practice session was infused with the lessons she had learned: patience, focus, and emotional expression. She experimented with different styles, learning to express a wide range of feelings through the piano. Her love for music deepened, and she realized that the journey was ongoing, with endless opportunities for growth, discovery, and self-expression. The recital had also made her more aware of the power of perseverance and encouragement. She remembered the moments when her mother's words had inspired her to continue, when her siblings' quiet support had given her courage, and when her teacher's guidance had shaped her skills. She understood that no achievement occurred in isolation. It was the combination of effort, support, and belief that made success possible. She began to think about ways to encourage others, to offer the same quiet support that had helped her overcome doubt and fear. In the weeks after the performance, she started volunteering to play music at small gatherings, in classrooms, and at community events. She discovered that the act of sharing music was rewarding in ways she had never imagined. Each performance, no matter how small, gave her a sense of purpose and connection. She saw the joy and inspiration that music could bring to others, and it reinforced her belief in the importance of passion, dedication, and the courage to pursue dreams. She also reflected on the ridicule and doubt she had faced before the recital. While it had been painful at the time, she now understood that those moments had been part of her growth. The mockery had challenged her, pushed her to persevere, and strengthened her determination. It had also taught her empathy, patience, and the ability to focus on what truly mattered rather than being swayed by the opinions of others. She had learned that criticism could be transformed into motivation, and doubt could become a stepping stone rather than a barrier. Her dreams began to expand beyond the school recital. She imagined participating in larger performances, exploring new styles of music, and perhaps even teaching others. She realized that the recital had been a beginning, not an end, a foundation upon which she could build her skills, confidence, and future. The memory of her mother's encouragement remained a guiding light, reminding her that passion and perseverance were her true companions. In quiet moments, she would sit at the piano and think about her journey, from the early days of hesitation to the triumphant performance. She remembered the small victories, the hours of practice, and the emotions that had flowed through each note. She felt gratitude for every challenge, every encouragement, and every moment of self-discovery. Music had become more than a hobby. It was a way of life, a language through which she could express her deepest feelings, and a bridge connecting her to the world. Her confidence extended beyond music. She became more willing to take risks, to speak up, and to pursue other goals with the same determination she had shown at the piano. She understood that courage was a skill that could be applied in many areas of life, and that persistence could lead to growth and achievement. The lessons from her musical journey influenced her attitude, her relationships, and her approach to challenges in ways she had not anticipated. She also began to share her story with others, especially those who faced doubt, fear, or ridicule. She wanted to show that even a small request, met with mockery, could lead to remarkable outcomes when approached with dedication, patience, and courage. Her journey became a source of inspiration, a real-life example of how passion and persistence could transform challenges into triumphs. Over time, she noticed that the fear she once felt before performing had lessened. While nerves still appeared occasionally, she had learned to channel them into focus and energy rather than letting them overwhelm her. She understood that preparation, practice, and belief in herself were her tools for success. The lessons from the recital stayed with her, shaping not only her music but also her approach to life. She continued to grow as a musician, exploring complex pieces and experimenting with her own interpretations. Each performance was an opportunity to express herself, to share her emotions, and to connect with others. She realized that music was not just about technical skill, but about honesty, expression, and the courage to be vulnerable. Every note she played carried a piece of her journey, a reflection of the challenges she had overcome, and the love she had for her art. The memory of her mother's encouragement remained central to her progress. She often thought about the words of wisdom and support, feeling them guide her through practice, performance, and life. Her mother's influence had given her the strength to persist, the courage to face doubt, and the joy of expressing herself through music. That legacy became a source of inspiration and a reminder of the enduring power of love, belief, and support. As she continued on her musical path, she also recognized the importance of helping others discover their own passions. She encouraged friends and younger students to pursue what they loved, to practice patiently, and to embrace the challenges along the way. She shared the lessons she had learned, that perseverance mattered more than immediate success, that doubt could be a teacher rather than an obstacle, and that expression through art could touch hearts and inspire courage. Looking back on her journey, she realized that the simple request to perform at the recital had set off a chain of growth, learning, and triumph. It had taught her resilience, focus, confidence, and the power of dedication. It had shown her the importance of support, encouragement, and belief in oneself. And it had allowed her to share a part of herself with the world, to communicate emotions, and to inspire others through the universal language of music. In her heart, she knew that this was only the beginning. The recital had been a milestone, but the journey continued. She would face new challenges, learn new pieces, and explore new opportunities, always carrying the lessons of courage, perseverance, and expression. The memory of her mother's pride and encouragement remained with her, a guiding force in every note she played, every risk she took, and every dream she pursued. Ultimately, she understood that her story was not just about playing the piano, but about discovering her own strength, embracing her passion, and finding the courage to follow her dreams. She had faced doubt, ridicule, and fear, and had emerged stronger, more confident, and more self-aware. Her music had become a reflection of her journey, a celebration of her perseverance, and a testament to the power of belief, love, and dedication. And in that knowledge, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment, pride, and hope for the future.